I find it rather funny that I managed to release my last video on Rock the Cradle just an hour before Starbreeze ended up releasing their next Heist shopping spree, which I might make a full video on, but I'm not sure at this point since my main focus has been the original 8, and apparently someone in Starbreeze is listening as well, otherwise they wouldn't have changed Touch the Sky in this last patch. Everyone's calling out 99 boxes, but I'll get to that in due time for changes. For now, it's time to visit the American ripoff of the Louvre Museum with Under the Surphaze. Yeah, it was inevitable that I had to talk about these, since, at least until the latest patch on Touch the Sky, all of the latter 4 heists from launch had this extremely uninspired, aggravating, and boring mechanic. Stand in enough of these circles to finish unlocking a door. Everybody remembers them, everybody hates them, so it's time to get rid of them. Wow, what an inspired choice, get rid of the thing nobody likes. Back on track. Let me explain how this heist works as it is now before I make any changes. You're told to steal specific paintings in this museum for Beckett in this art gallery with 7 mini-galleries within. In stealth, each one of these rooms has more and more elaborate security measures that you have to carefully maneuver around to turn off. Of course, that's only step 1. Step 2 is hiding from cameras and guards while you do a geometry dash across wherever the game feels like moving you to unlock the security bars for both the top and bottom floor galleries respectively. Only one of these paintings has an actual gimmick to it, and that's finding out which of the final objective paintings you need is legitimate by using a spectrophotometer to find out for you, after which you place a USB drive from the manager's office into the correct one and take it away like the rest of the paintings. This heist has a total of 20 bags to grab, with 3 in each of the display areas, not counting the fake Uma painting. No, not that Uma. Of course, if you decide to look at the list of achievements and replay this heist with friends, you'll find a secret 21st painting as well, and this one requires a bit of setup. In almost all of the rooms, there's a statue in a display case that you can grab. But don't do that immediately if you want to get the 21st painting, which I'm going to call the Chandra Latrell painting from here on. In the manager's office, you're going to find 3 miniature statues on the desk, as well as a secret button behind a painting. You and at least 2 other players need to not only clear this heist in stealth, but also make sure not to grab these statues specifically until you can all do it at exactly the same time, at which point the Latrell painting becomes grabbable. Also, a funny thing to mention when taking the camera away from the player character, you can actually see every statue in the heist loaded on the desk until you enter the building, which I just think is neat. Back on topic though, now one player needs to go back to the manager's office, a second player goes to the painting on the bottom floor, and your third is preferably on cameras to help guide the second player out of the sudden laser puzzle that appears once the painting is taken, that, for the sake of extra challenge, you can only see the lasers through the cameras. At least that's how it worked when I got this achievement back in April 2024. But once you've grabbed the Latrell painting, you have every piece of loot in the map and have a bit more money for it. Not enough money for the sheer amount of retries you probably had to do to get the painting, but hey, to each their own, I guess. I know I don't want to do it again. In Loud, it's not much different. You just happen to be standing in circles while you're getting shot at and eventually end up loading all the paintings into Bile's chopper on the roof before using that to escape as well. Though you can't get the Latrell painting for whatever reason. Maybe because it's supposed to be a stealth challenge? Although with the sheer amount of communication you need to get it, I don't understand why it's stealth exclusive aside from maybe the laser puzzle part. It doesn't come across all that much with what I've written down and shown, but this is one of the heists you're going to memorize where the reset button is in stealth, or just completely forget about once you finish it in Loud, since there's no special gimmick or anything besides this being the first one that shows the infamous circles. Oh boy, I have my work cut out for me here with one of the most frustrating and boring heists so far. So I'm going to work a bit backwards here, similar to my Dirty Ice video, by talking about what escapes could be added first, pretty much only for Loud since I'll have a whole section for stealth changes later. So having Bile swing by on the chopper for the escape on the rooftop is fine and dandy, nothing exactly wrong with that. He even has 2 different spots on the roof to show up, which can make the bag moving process a bit different between runs, but not significantly enough, I feel. So just like with the other heists, Bile could show up at the pier next to the museum itself instead as one of his escape locations, which, yeah, I know it's getting a bit old saying he should show up at the docks a 3rd time, but I have another idea that you'll probably be more interested in. You see this courtyard in front of the museum itself? This is criminally underused, and I think would make for an excellent escape location, whether that escape is through a manhole cover sneaking into the sewers, or simply running through it to get to Twitch in the van across the street from the front entrance. Along with that, this as an escape would give another location for the zipline bag to be placed because one of the locations is only really good for stealth or a dock escape, and the other one, yeah, I don't really know the use case for this to be entirely honest. I'm not saying to get rid of either of these, just add another spot for the zipline at the front of the building and the courtyard. Now, I should probably talk about the security bars protecting each of the pieces of art since that's what the circles are there for. What's going to replace them? Well, we already have something of a solution in syntax error, even though that use case is only shown in stealth. But the central sins room has a panel with 5 buttons, each one unlocking a server room for you to loot. You can still go into these rooms and disable the door lasers in case you ever go back into these rooms, or do them out of order, like disabling room A and then using the vent to enter room C, which is still enabled. The security here is nowhere near as elaborate as Surphaze, but the idea still applies. Surphaze could very easily have something like this implemented as well. There's plenty of back rooms that you need to scour for QR codes to enter. You could very easily put one of those panels in those. Or just as easily put the panels into the upstairs storage room since they don't really get any use otherwise. Well, aside from being a convenient choke point and loud, but that doesn't really count. The only limitation I'd really put on these is only being able to have 3 active at a time rather than the 1 at a time with syntax, mostly so that the achievement bag is still obtainable. Either that or giving each one a 2-minute long timer so there's still some tension when getting to the specific rooms, but having 3 out of 7 disabled at once sounds easier to manage. Now to move on to stealth, this is a bit more interesting and slightly disappointing as well, since this is a heist where you pretty much can't progress it without masking up at some point or another, which makes either having a friend just waiting outside for bags or the zipline favor mandatory to clear this without having to juggle the civilians outside of the back of the building. This is somewhat addressed with the favor being able to throw the bags into a dumpster, but honestly this would probably do better as something that can just randomly happen instead of needing to be activated, especially because it completely disables itself when you go loud anyway. Looking at the favors for a moment, most of them are fine, but don't really do that much realistically. So, from the top, I'd replace the dumpster secure point favor with a sewer secure point that doesn't disappear in loud to go with the extra escape option I mentioned back in the loud section. Next is the open main entrance, which is pretty much worthless considering you need to mask up eventually in stealth anyway, not even counting the fact that the museum itself is a secure area. And in loud, you don't care if it's locked anyway, so this one doesn't need to stay. Instead, I would change this entirely into a stealth-focused favor called Art Connoisseur, which spawns in a special NPC who has a pass to the museum. Functionally, this would work like the press badge in Houston Breakout, allowing you into the main museum area, though the security system would still be up so you'd need to take care of them some other way. But it would be a way to progress the heist in stealth without needing to mask up, similar to the one mask down favor in Fear and Greed. The additional QR code functions fine enough, but as a favor it's kind of boring, so I'd rather replace it with a favor that could have one of the security rooms randomly disabled, call it unpaid intern or something like that. Lastly, the faster chopper escape isn't worth that much since Bile never leaves anyway, so instead, make it a guarantee that he shows up on the roof instead of flying to the waterfront so you already have a relatively safer spot to move the bags. Now, back to actually playing the game, and looking at syntax again for this, I think the manager's office should have some kind of system to disable the security in one of the galleries for, say, 30 or 60 seconds, and then you make a mad dash to the display room that has a particularly annoying sequence for you in an effort to reach the power box before the lasers and or motion sensor comes back on. Maybe make use of this big TV in the room to show which room it's selecting and have a button beneath it to disable the room itself. This heist is one of the most mediocre or one of the most frustrating heists in the game, whether you're playing it in loud or stealth respectively. You just go in, stand in some circles, grab some stuff, and get out, and that's pretty much it. Which is a shame, because this is one of the most interesting layouts for a map in the game with actual randomized rooms and criminally underutilized verticality, with stairs outside, inside, and inside. But little is actually done with them, where a lot of what you get is just open, empty space. If it wasn't pretty obvious by now, I'm not a fan of this heist. At all. But even if only the circles were removed from this and literally nothing else was changed, I'd be singing a different tune, since at that point, it's extremely simple to get in and out in a very short amount of time. Sure, the circles could emphasize coordination, but there's far more cons than pros with that mechanic. I bet you were expecting this kind of rant when I got to 99 boxes, huh? Well, that's Under the Surphaze and what I changed in it, which is actually mostly relating to the implementation of the security systems and adding more variety to the escape. Even though there isn't actually a manhole cover in the geometry of the map in the courtyard area right now, you could very easily have one added, or use the one in the street nearby if you don't feel like adding a new asset for an escape. Next up, we're going back to a bank in this bank robbing game, with one I probably won't reach even 8 minutes talking about because it's a heist mode people actually enjoyed at launch, and for the most part still holds up 2 years later. Until then, I appreciate you guys watching this, and I hope you take care.